Most people think weak bones announce themselves with a fall, a slippery bathroom floor, a misstep on the stairs, a sudden crack in the hip or wrist. That is what families remember. That is what most older adults fear. But after the age of 60, bones usually do not begin failing with a dramatic moment. They begin failing quietly, gradually, invisibly, long before any fracture ever happens. They weaken at the dinner table, in the grocery cart, and very often in the meal almost nobody takes seriously enough: lunch. And here is what surprises many people when they finally learn this. The problem is often not just what they are eating too much of, it is what they are not eating enough of in the middle of the day. Not enough protein, not enough of the raw material the body uses to help maintain muscle, support balance, and preserve the structure that keeps bones resilient. After 60, that gap matters far more than most people realize, because bones are not dead sticks inside the body. They are living tissue. They are constantly being broken down and rebuilt. And once you get older, that rebuilding process becomes slower, less efficient, and much easier to undermine. Today I want to show you 3 protein-rich foods that deserve a permanent place in your lunch rotation if you are serious about keeping your bones stronger for longer. Not miracle foods, not trendy powders, not expensive anti-aging gimmicks. Just 3 practical foods that are easy to find, easy to eat, and backed by solid nutrition logic. And by the end, I will show you the simple lunch formula that makes these foods work even better. Stay with me, because this is not really about lunch. It is about independence. It is about keeping your balance, your mobility, your confidence, and your ability to live life on your own terms. Here is something many people over 60 never hear clearly enough. The body does not use protein only for muscle. Protein is involved in the structure of bone itself, and it also supports the muscle strength that helps prevent falls in the first place. That matters because one of the fastest ways older adults lose independence is not through a major disease diagnosis that everyone sees coming. It is through a fracture, a fall, a recovery that takes longer than expected, a hip that never fully feels the same again, a back that starts to curve, a fear of walking outside alone. And once that cycle begins, it is not only the bone that suffers. Activity drops, muscle declines, appetite changes, confidence shrinks, the world gets smaller. That is why weak bones after 60 are never just about bones. They are about the entire architecture of daily life. Now here is the hidden mistake. Many older adults believe breakfast is small, dinner is family time, and lunch can be whatever is easiest. A little toast, some tea, maybe a small bowl of something light, maybe fruit and crackers, maybe nothing at all. That sounds harmless. It is not. When lunch becomes nutritionally weak day after day, protein intake often ends up too low or too unevenly distributed. And that matters because the aging body is not as forgiving as it once was. It does not respond to tiny scattered amounts of protein the same way a younger body can. It needs clearer signals, more consistent intake, better quality choices. Think of it this way. If your bones and muscles are a house you are trying to maintain, then protein is not the paint on the wall. It is part of the repair crew. If the repair crew keeps showing up late, underfed, or not at all, small damage stops getting fixed the way it should. Nothing dramatic happens that day, or that week. But over time, the structure changes, quietly. That is exactly why lunch matters more than people think. So let us start with the first food, and for many people, it is the most powerful one to add because it does more than one job at the same time. The first food is salmon, especially a lunch portion that is easy to repeat, whether that means fresh salmon, leftover baked salmon, or even canned salmon, and in some cases canned salmon with soft edible bones. Most people hear salmon and immediately think of heart health, and that is fair. But for older adults concerned about weak bones, salmon deserves attention for another reason. It is a high-quality protein source, and depending on the form, it can also contribute nutrients that matter for bone support, including vitamin D and, when bones are included and eaten, calcium. That combination is unusually helpful. Here is why. Bones do not simply need calcium dumped into the body. They need a nutritional environment that helps the body use what it gets. Protein matters in that environment. Vitamin D matters. Overall meal quality matters. And salmon gives you an efficient way to raise the quality of lunch without making lunch feel heavy. A lot of people over 60 tell themselves they do not want a large midday meal because it makes them sleepy. I understand that. But adding a real protein anchor to lunch is not the same thing as eating a giant plate. In fact, one of the smartest ways to make lunch more bone-friendly is not to make it bigger. It is to make it better built. A salmon lunch can be surprisingly simple. Flaked salmon over a salad, salmon with vegetables and a small serving of rice, a salmon sandwich on whole grain bread, even canned salmon mixed with yogurt or mustard and served with chopped vegetables. The point is not perfection. The point is consistency, and there is another reason I like this food in this kind of script. It corrects a dangerous nutrition pattern in older adults, the light, low-protein lunch that feels healthy but does not actually do enough. A plate of lettuce with almost no protein is not a strong lunch. A few crackers and fruit is not a strong lunch. Soup with little substance is not a strong lunch. But when salmon is on the plate, lunch starts becoming structurally useful. It starts helping the body maintain something instead of merely getting through the afternoon. Now let me ask you something directly. When was the last time your lunch contained a serious portion of protein? Not a bite, not a garnish. A true center-of-the-plate source. If you have to think hard about the answer, that tells you something important already. Now, the second food may surprise some people because it is often thought of as a breakfast item, a snack, or something people only eat when they are dieting. But for bone support after 60, it deserves far more respect than it gets. The second food is Greek yogurt. Plain, unsweetened if possible, or at least lower in added sugar. Greek yogurt is useful because it brings together three things older adults often need more intentionally: protein, convenience, and calcium. And that combination matters because the best nutrition habits are not just good on paper, they are realistic enough to repeat 3 or 4 times a week without friction. That is where Greek yogurt shines. It does not require cooking. It does not require chewing through something tough. It can work in a savory lunch bowl, not just a sweet one. It can be used as a base, a side, or even a replacement for less nutritious creamy dressings. Most importantly, it helps solve a very common aging nutrition problem. Appetite becomes less predictable, but nutrient needs do not disappear. In fact, they often become more important. Many older adults eat less overall than they used to. That means every meal has to work harder. And when every meal has to work harder, low-effort, high-value foods become extremely valuable. Greek yogurt is one of them. You can pair it with chopped cucumber, herbs, and chickpeas. You can add it beside a lentil soup. You can use it in a salmon bowl. You can mix it with crushed walnuts and a few berries if you prefer a lighter lunch. However you use it, what matters is that it upgrades lunch from weak to useful. It also gives people a practical way to stop relying on foods that feel filling but do not actually support bone and muscle maintenance well enough. Toast alone is easy. Tea and biscuits are easy. A little cereal is easy. But easy is not always enough after 60. Here is where many people go wrong. They think, I had something at lunch, so lunch is fine. But the question is not whether you ate. The question is whether lunch delivered what your body can still use. That is a very different standard. A body in its 20s can sometimes coast on sloppy meal structure. A body in its 60s, 70s, and 80s usually cannot. The margin for error gets smaller. Recovery gets slower. Weakness accumulates more quietly. That is why foods like Greek yogurt are not boring nutrition advice. They are strategic foods. They help close the gap between what older adults think they ate and what their bodies actually needed. And now we come to the third food, the one I especially want plant-forward eaters, lighter eaters, and budget-conscious households to pay attention to. The third food is lentils. You could also think in the same family as beans or chickpeas, but lentils are especially practical because they are versatile, affordable, and easy to work into lunch without much fuss. A lot of people hear protein for bones and assume the conversation begins and ends with meat. That is too narrow. Lentils matter because they offer protein in a format many people can eat regularly, and regularity matters more than occasional perfection. One excellent meal once a week is not what changes the body. Repeated meals do. Stable habits do. Lentils can become soup, salad, stew, side dish, or the base of an entire lunch bowl. They also pair beautifully with Greek yogurt, or with vegetables that make the meal feel complete instead of medicinal. And that point matters, because the best older adult nutrition pattern is one that feels like normal life, not punishment. No one sticks to a plan that feels clinical every day. But lentils are not just useful because they are affordable and adaptable. They are useful because they help fix another lunch problem many older adults have: meals that are too refined and too soft in the wrong way. White bread, small pastries, sweet snacks, and easy carbohydrates can leave people feeling as if they ate lunch, while protein intake stays far below where it should be. Lentils change that equation. They give lunch substance, they help the plate feel anchored, and when they are combined wisely, they make it much easier to build a meal that supports strength instead of merely satisfying habit. Now here is the bigger reveal in this entire conversation. The real problem is not just that many older adults are missing one magical bone food. The real problem is that lunch is often too nutritionally weak to support aging well. That is the issue. Weak bones after 60 are rarely caused by one lunch. They are shaped by hundreds of lunches. The same way stronger aging is not built by one superfood. It is built by repetition, by patterns, by meals that quietly do their job over and over again. That is why I do not want you to leave this conversation thinking, "Fine, I will eat salmon once and I'm covered." That is not how this works. I want you to think in systems. I want you to think in defaults. I want you to think, what kind of lunch keeps showing up on my table, and what is that lunch training my body to become? Because every recurring lunch pattern is a message to the body. Build, maintain, repair, or slowly fall behind. Now let me make this even more practical. If you want to protect your bones after 60, lunch should not be random anymore. It should follow a simple structure. First, choose one real protein anchor. That could be salmon, that could be Greek yogurt, that could be lentils. Second, add one or two nutrient-dense supports. Vegetables, especially those that make the meal feel complete and colorful. If you use dairy or calcium-fortified foods, even better. Third, stop treating lunch as a nutritional afterthought. That shift alone can change more than most people expect, because once lunch improves, several other things often improve with it. Afternoon energy becomes steadier, evening overeating may ease, protein intake becomes more evenly spread through the day, and that last point is especially important. Research in older adults suggests that protein is not just about total daily intake. Distribution across the day matters too. In other words, if nearly all your protein arrives late at dinner, you may be missing a valuable chance to support your body earlier in the day. This is why the title of this script matters. Add these foods to lunch, not just to life in general, not to your grocery list in theory, to lunch specifically, because that is where so many people have the biggest gap, and once that gap closes, the body has a better chance to keep up with the work of aging. I want to pause here and speak to you honestly. A lot of bone-related advice online is either too vague or too magical. One side says, just eat healthy. The other side says, this one powder, this one supplement, this one hidden hack will fix everything. Real aging does not work that way. Real aging is quieter than that, more practical than that, more repetitive than that. Stronger bones after 60 usually come from doing ordinary things better for a long time. More protein, where it was missing, better meal structure, enough calcium from smart sources, adequate vitamin D where appropriate, physical activity, balance work, resistance exercise, medical follow-up when needed. It is not a glamorous answer, but it is the answer that holds up in real life, and that is why I like these 3 lunch foods so much. They are not dramatic. They are usable. They can fit into a normal week. They can survive real schedules, real appetites, and real budgets. Now imagine 2 different lunch patterns over the next year. In the first pattern, lunch is mostly random. Toast, tea, soup with very little substance, crackers, fruit, maybe skipped entirely. In the second pattern, lunch repeatedly includes salmon, Greek yogurt, or lentils in some form. Not every day perfectly, but regularly. 2. Consistently. Enough to matter. Which pattern do you think gives the body a better chance to maintain muscle, support balance, and preserve the framework that keeps life independent? The answer is obvious when you say it out loud, but it is easy to miss when you are living on autopilot. That is why this matters, not because the information is complicated, but because it is simple enough to ignore, and the simple things people ignore for years are often the things that shape aging the most. So let us bring everything together in a way you can actually use, starting this week. Food number 1, salmon, because it gives you high-quality protein and in some forms, helpful bone support nutrients in the same meal. Food number 2, Greek yogurt, because it is convenient, protein-rich, calcium-friendly, and easy to repeat without effort. Food number 3, lentils, because they are affordable, adaptable, and powerful enough to upgrade lunch from weak to solid. That is the list. 3 foods. But I do not want you to just remember the foods. I want you to remember the principle behind them. After 60, lunch has to do more than fill time between breakfast and dinner. It has to contribute to strength. It has to help preserve the body you still want to rely on 5, 10, and 15 years from now. Now I would like to ask you something directly. Which of these 3 foods is the easiest for you to add to your lunch this week? Salmon, Greek yogurt, or lentils? One of them probably feels realistic already. Start there. You do not need to overhaul your entire life tonight. You need one repeatable upgrade, one better default, one lunch that starts showing up often enough to matter. And if this message helped you see lunch differently, share it with someone over 60 who still thinks weak bones are only about calcium tablets or bad luck. Because in many cases, it is not bad luck at all. It is information people never received clearly enough, early enough, or often enough. One final thought. Nothing in this video is a substitute for personalized medical care. If you have osteoporosis, kidney disease, digestive problems, unexplained weight loss, trouble chewing, or a medical condition that affects what you can safely eat, talk with your physician or a registered dietitian before making major dietary changes. That is not just a disclaimer. It is the smartest way to turn good information into the right plan for your body. But if your lunch has been weak, light, or protein poor for years, take this seriously. The plate you build in the middle of the day may be shaping far more of your future than you realize. Start with one food. Repeat it. Build from there. Your bones may be quieter than your muscles, quieter than your appetite, quieter than your daily routine, but they are responding all the time. Give them better material, and over time, you give yourself a better chance to stay strong, steady, and independent.